Joining us now is Jean-Pierre Misago. He's a researcher at the African Center for Migration and Society with the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And here with us in our Washington, D.C. studio is Dorina Biko. She's an associate professor at the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. Welcome to both of you. Dorina, let me start with you. Why is there this huge influx of foreigners into South Africa, and where do they come from?
Well, they are really coming from all over the continent. In the post-apartheid era, where South Africa has essentially opened its doors and also demonstrated, that there is economic opportunity. It has also seen an influx of migrant workers from all over the continent, and they're there for the same reasons people migrate all over the world, is to seek better opportunities for themselves and their families.
And given the situation in Africa, South Africa, relatively speaking, still has, I guess, the most powerful economy.
It does. Second to Nigeria. There was the rebasing this year, but it's still an economic powerhouse and still attracts professionals and other workers in even less the sort of informal sectors as well.
Right, which brings us to the complaint we often hear from South Africans who tell us that the immigrants, or kwere as they're known in South Africa, are stealing our jobs. Jean-Pierre, is that truly the case?
There is definitely competition for scarce resources, including jobs. But as you all know, in South Africa, like in every other country, there are what is known as migrant jobs. These are jobs mostly locals or nationals don't really want. And another thing is that migrants actually here are creating more jobs than they take from employers. They are involved in small businesses, and they create jobs for South Africans. So the idea that they're stealing jobs is not actually supported by empirical evidence. But they create jobs, and they are more likely to hire South Africans than South Africans hiring them.
Dorina, we have a situation in South Africa where this violence against foreigners is nothing new. In 2008, there were attacks against foreigners and 60 to 70 people died at that time. What triggers it? What brings it on again?
In the last couple of years, especially in South Africa, there have been a lot of service delivery protests with very high probabilities of ending up in violence. So I think that there's a lots of frustration on the part of ordinary South Africans. The unemployment rate is still very high at about 25%. Their promises in many of the townships for better development has not been fulfilled. I think we saw a lot of that in the last election. A lot of sort of criticism of the ANC for not delivering on development promises. And foreigners are sort of easy targets, as sort of blaming them for not getting the jobs that they are supposed to get. So I think there's a lot of sort of domestic frustration, and unfortunately, outsiders are seen as the ones who are the reasons for why their dreams aren't being fulfilled.
Jean-Pierre, as you noted just a moment ago, there is intense competition for scarce resources, in this case jobs. The unemployment rate, as we've just heard, 25 to 26%. What is the South African government doing to address this problem of unemployment?
I mean, it's a big issue. Unemployment is a big issue, and to be honest with you, there's no clear measures to tackle it. All what we hear is political pronouncements and promises, but they are never delivered on. They promise, the only thing they're trying to do is to try to give local South African skills through education, but it hasn't achieved its potential yet. So far, there are really no concrete measures to tackle the unemployment issue. But quickly going back to the issue of migrants in South Africa, there is an impression that South Africa is being flooded by migrants. But the last census showed that only 4% of South African residents were foreign born. So it's by no means any different from any other countries. So the idea of there is an influx, South Africa is being invaded by foreign nationals being taken over, is simply a myth.
And Dorina, that is a very low figure, 4%. Are African migrants into South Africa actually taking away jobs? Because we see that in many instances, they are actually creating jobs. They come there as small business entrepreneurs, opening small businesses in cities around the country.
That's correct, and that's unfortunately one of the myths, as Jean-Pierre said. The number of foreigners is actually quite small. There's a recent survey done in South Africa that looked at how, what the breakdown was between non-migrant workers versus foreign workers. They actually found that 80% of the jobs were actually going to South Africans. About 4%, as he said, were foreign-born, and the rest were South Africans that were actually migrants within their own country. So people who had moved, to find jobs. So the majority of jobs are being held by South Africans. The same study did find that the unemployment rate among the internationals or the foreigners was a bit lower, about 15% versus the 25%. So there is that discrepancy, and maybe that might sort of fuel the perception that jobs are being taken away by foreigners. But the reality is not the case.
Jean-Pierre, let's listen to what South African President Jacob Zuma said about this issue. Let's watch.
There are socio-economic issues that have been raised which are being attended to. These include complaints about illegal and undocumented immigrants in the country, the increase in the number of shops or small businesses that have been taken over by foreign nationals, and also perceptions that foreign nationals commit or perpetrate crime.
So Jacob Zuma there, Jean-Pierre, telling us that South Africa recognizes that they do have a problem there. But if we look at one of the responses of the South African government, it has been to conduct raids, conduct mass arrests of migrants in an effort to root out undocumented immigrants. And they've been severely criticized for this. Is some of that criticism valid?
Yeah, some of it is valid because they seem to be reactive rather than proactive in dealing with this issue of migration. Local residents complain about the presence of migrants in their communities, and the government only listens when there is violence. So the violence in some way has become a way of locals to get the attention of the government. There is a professor who released the report recently who said this violence, he called the violence the smoke that calls. Locals know that when they attack foreign nationals, what's going to happen? The government, international community is going to respond, to come to listen to grievances. I'm glad President Zuma said it's perceptions. But even if perceptions have to be addressed, not just be ignored or pushed away without somebody taking care, trying to understand the concern people express. Because people might have a genuine concerns, and when the leaders ignore that as just perception without sitting with the population who works with those concerns and try to address them, it becomes an issue. It becomes, it seems as if the government doesn't care, the leadership doesn't care, so we are on our own, we have to do everything we can to protect ourselves. So yeah, but the issue about small businesses and being taken over by by foreign nationals. In most cases, foreign nationals go to areas where those businesses don't exist. They rent shops from the local owners, from the local residents, and then when they start the business, when they start making some profit, then the locals start complaining that it's that taking over. That in most cases, they go to areas where those businesses are not really flourishing.